Are you a brand new podcaster, hoping to share what you're passionate about to whoever's willing to listen, but you aren't sure where to start? Navigating the logistics of your podcast can be confusing, from tracking growth to getting your podcast on the biggest platforms like Apple and Spotify. That's why I use Captivate. Captivate is a podcast publishing site that's user-friendly and offers everything you need to fulfill your podcast's full potential. They'll help you publish your podcast to all of the most popular platforms, as well as help you track your growth through daily, weekly, 28, and 90-day download numbers, as well as the averages, so you can see where your podcast might be flourishing or floundering. What's more, they'll help you with promotion and advertising. They offer free courses on how to start and run the perfect podcast, and they even throw in a free website with your subscription, completely customizable to fit your podcast's personality. You can sign up now starting at $19 a month, and you'll even get a free 7-day trial so you can decide whether or not it's right for you. Sign up today at thezoologist.net/captivate, and what's more, you'll be supporting my show. Captivate truly is a podcaster's best friend. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Zoologist podcast. I'm your host Jake, and today we'll be learning more about some of the amazing creatures that inhabit our planet. As always, let's get ready to get wild. Now, dear listener, if there's one thing you should know about me, it's that I absolutely love elephants. They are my favorite animal, and they have been for as long as I can remember. There's a reason this podcast logo has an elephant in it. Objectively, they are absolutely incredible animals. They're extremely smart. They are highly social, and they're capable of far more than you might think. That's why today I'll be presenting my arguments for why the elephant should be everyone's favorite animal. Let's dive in. Hello everyone, hope you're having a great start to your week, wherever you are and whenever you're listening to this. Hopefully some knowledge about the animal kingdom is just what you need to brighten your day up a little bit. I don't know what it is about animals, but they just seem to make us so happy. There's something inherently soothing about animals. Maybe we should do an episode about that someday, find out if there's any science behind it. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, it probably means you love animals. I don't like to assume, but I would be shocked if you're listening to this and you don't like animals. If you do love animals, then you definitely have a favorite. Maybe it's dogs, maybe it's horses, maybe it's something unusual like axolotls, or maybe it's something like snakes or spiders. If it is, no judgment from me. The king cobra is in at least my top 10. But I also have a favorite animal, a number one, the elephant. And they've been my favorite animal for as long as I can remember. Don't ask me why. I honestly can't tell you what it was that made me decide I loved elephants so much. But the more I learn about them, the more I feel like I made a good choice. Elephants are amazing creatures. They're incredibly smart. They have emotional capacities like you can't imagine. And just in general, they're really, really cool animals. Humanity has been fascinated by elephants for a long, long time, and there's a reason for that. All of this and more is why I believe that elephants should be everyone's favorite animal. Admittedly, that's a biased opinion, but as I present my arguments today, hopefully you'll see it isn't without merit. I don't want to spoil anything yet, but by the end of this episode, I hope elephants will, at the very least, be in your top 5. If I fail, that's okay. At least I can say I tried. First things first, though, some basic information about elephants is probably needed just to give you some context for everything else we're going to talk about today. There are 3 different species of elephant. The Asian elephant, which covers a range from India all the way down to Sumatra and Borneo. The African savanna elephant, which is native to the grasslands of sub-Saharan Africa, as its name suggests. And then there's the African forest elephant, which can be found in the rainforests of Western Africa. The forest elephant is probably the most obscure of the 3. It was thought to be a subspecies of African elephant for the longest time, until recently testing revealed that it's more genetically distinct than was previously thought. Because of this, the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, listed them as their own species and then declared them critically endangered in 2021. And speaking of endangered, all 3 elephant species are considered to be threatened. There is an estimated 40 to 50,000 Asian elephants left in the wild. On the continent of Africa, collectively, there are about 415,000 elephants, which sounds like a lot, but back in 1930, there was 10 million elephants on the continent. So overall, their numbers on decline, and the future of all 3 species is up in the air right now. It's pretty uncertain. All three elephant species are absolutely massive. They're the largest living land animals. Savanna elephants are the biggest of the three species, and they can weigh anywhere between 8,000 and 12,000 pounds. For those of you who use the metric system, that's somewhere between 3,600 and 5,400 kilograms. They also stand between 10 to 12 feet at the shoulder, or 3 to 3.6 meters. Asian elephants are a little smaller, weighing anywhere between 6 and 11,000 pounds, or 2,700 and 5,000 kilograms, standing 7 to 10 feet at the shoulder, or 2.1 to 3 meters. And then finally, African forest elephants are the smallest of the three species. They usually weigh in somewhere between 4,000 and 10,000 pounds, or 1,800 and 4,500 kilograms, and they stand about 8 to 10 feet at the shoulder, or 2.4 to 3 meters. As you can imagine, elephants need a lot of food to fuel those massive bodies, so they'll spend up to 18 hours a day just eating, and they'll travel huge distances to find food and water. It's actually one of the reasons why elephants struggle so much in captivity. They're used to covering so much ground in a single day. Some estimates put it at about 30 to 50 miles just in a single day searching for food and water. And obviously they can't do that in captivity, so they face a lot of health issues related to a lot more inactivity. They're herbivores, so they'll eat grass, leaves, tree bark, fruit, vegetables, basically anything they can get their trunks on. As far as I'm aware, elephants are not particularly picky eaters. Now, my first argument why elephants should be your favorite animal is a pretty simple one. In general, elephants are just really cool. I mean, take their trunks, for example. An elephant's trunk is an amazing appendage. It acts as a nose, an upper lip, an arm, and a hand all in one. It contains 40,000 muscles, which makes it strong enough to pick up logs and other huge items, but they also have two or one, depending on the species. African elephants have 2, Asian elephants have 1, but they have small finger-like appendages on the end of their trunks, and these appendages are precise enough to pick up a coin or to pick up a single blade of grass. So very, very versatile, an elephant's trunk, a very versatile tool that they can use for just about anything that they need. And then there's their tusks. These are a pair of elongated teeth made of ivory, which is probably the biggest reason why they're so threatened, actually. Ivory is extremely valuable, and elephants are often hunted by poachers looking to cash in. Elephants use their tusks for all sorts of things. They use them to scrape bark off of trees for food, dig for water, or they'll even use them for defense. Sometimes they'll even rest their trunk across one of their tusks, I guess, when they're feeling tired. Elephants even have a dominant tusk, kind of like humans are right or left-handed. They can be right or left tusked. They prefer using their dominant tusk, so you can tell which one is dominant because it'll be more worn down than the other one. Tusks aren't universal among elephants. Most African elephants have them, but in Asian elephants, only the males will grow them. Elephants also have the incredible ability to hear, quote-unquote, with their feet. So elephants make a number of different vocalizations, different sounds when they're communicating with one another. And among these, they'll often make low-frequency rumbles. These are too low for humans to be able to hear, but they can travel through the ground. The sound waves travel through the ground. And in a process that scientists call seismic communication, what they'll do is with their feet, elephants will pick up these signals, and they're able to decipher the content of the messages. These rumbles can travel dozens of miles through the ground. The reason that they're able to pick up these messages, the reason that they're able to communicate this way is because of how sensitive their feet are. Elephants, like all mammals, have what are called something called Pacinian corpuscles. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. Basically what they are is they're just receptors on the skin. And these receptors, they're connected to the part of the brain where touch signals are processed. In elephants, these receptors are clustered around the edge of their feet. So when elephants are trying to pick up a signal, what they'll do sometimes is they'll press their feet into the ground, enlarging the surface of their feet and making it easier for them to pick up whatever another elephant might be trying to communicate. Sometimes these vibrations, what they'll actually do is they'll travel through the ground and actually through the skeleton of the elephant directly to the inner ear bones. This is a process known as bone conduction. What scientists are actually doing is they're studying it in elephants in the hopes of developing a new and better hearing aid utilizing this process. What's really cool is that by comparing the sound waves that travel through the air and those that spread through the ground, elephants can actually find out the distance and direction of a message, kind of like how you count between thunder and lightning to find out how far away a storm is. In one study, scientists recorded an elephant making a predator alarm, and then they played this recording to a herd in Namibia. When they played the recording in speakers above the ground, the elephants ran away. But when the speaker was buried and played underground, they would act defensively. They arranged themselves in a defensive position. The adults would circle around the young, and they'd stay put. The elephants judged the distance between nearby and distant dangers based on how they were receiving the information, and they reacted accordingly. Elephants are also amazing for their ecosystem. They promote new plant growth in forests by opening up new paths and by knocking down trees. They also spread the seeds of trees through their dung. In fact, there are several tree species whose seeds only germinate if they pass through the gut of an elephant first. Amazing. Well, I think that's a good place to take a break. We'll be right back after this. Don't go anywhere. Hello everyone, and welcome back as we continue our discussion about elephants and what makes them so darn cool. I've talked a little bit about just some general facts about elephants that make them pretty cool. Their trunks, their tusks, their ability to communicate through their feet. But the next reason for why elephants should be your favorite animal is that elephants are extremely, extremely intelligent. They're one of only a few animals that can recognize themselves in a mirror. They've been known to use tools. They can even imitate human language. This one blew me away. There's an elephant apparently living in a zoo in South Korea, or it was. I don't know if it still is, but it's named Koshik. Hope I'm pronouncing that right too. By putting his trunk in his mouth, Koshik could mimic the words for hello, sit down, no, lie down, and good in Korean. On the research paper that they have, the article, they actually have recordings of this elephant mimicking these sounds, and it's absolutely incredible. There's apparently also an elephant in a zoo in Kazakhstan that, using the same method, can apparently imitate words in Kazakh and Russian. Along those lines, elephants also have the ability to distinguish human voices by language. They can distinguish voices by language, gender, and relative age, and then they can determine how much of a threat they are based on past experience. A team of researchers traveled to Amboseli National Park in Kenya, where they performed an experiment. The elephants in Amboseli will sometimes have conflict with some of the humans in the area, some of the tribes, over scarce water sources in the park. In particular, members of the Maasai tribe have sometimes killed elephants during these confrontations. So what these researchers did was they played a voice recording. They played voice recordings of men in the Maasai language saying, quote, "Look over there, a group of elephants is coming." And they would play this recording to a nearby herd of elephants. They also played men speaking the same phrase in the Kamba language, which is a tribe that's less of a threat to the elephants. By a 2-to-1 margin, the elephants reacted defensively more often to the Maasai language recording. They were also less afraid if the recording played was a woman or a child, and were much more likely to react defensively if it was a male. Even when the recordings were altered to make the men sound more female and vice versa, the elephants weren't fooled. So while we're studying elephants, it appears that they're studying us right back, and they remember who's likely to be a threat and who isn't. And speaking of memory, everyone's heard the phrase, "an elephant never forgets," and there's actually a lot of truth to that phrase. Elephants have an incredible long-term memory, aided by their brain structure. They have a very large cerebral cortex, which is the part of the brain where memories are stored, as well as a highly developed hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that takes in sensory information and turns it into memories. This ability that elephants have to remember and retain information long-term is incredibly useful. Consider the fact that these animals typically live to be about 50, 60 years in the wild, and some of them are even on record living to be as old as 80. With an animal that lives such a long life, a good memory is an extremely useful survival tactic. It's extremely useful to have. For example, they can remember where to go to find food or water in a drought, And this is actually exactly what happened back in 1993 when a drought struck Tarangire National Park in Tanzania. Researchers there were studying 3 of the park's elephant herds, and what they found is that they could recall where to find alternate food and water sources when their usual spots had dried up. They also found that herds that were led by older elephants, elephant herds are usually led by older females named matriarchs. And the herds that were led by older matriarchs that were older than average, were more likely to leave the park in search of food and water than herds that were led by younger matriarchs. As it turned out, herds that chose to stay put ended up losing more calves to the drought than those that left. Out of the 81 elephant calves born in the park in 1993, 16 of them died, which was higher than usual, and 10 of those were from herds that stayed. What these researchers figured was that these older matriarchs could remember a similar drought that occurred in the park back from 1958 to 1961, and they remembered what their herds did at that time to survive. None of the elephants that stayed behind were old enough to remember this drought. Elephants are also extremely social animals, which is likely part of the reason they're so intelligent. Females live in small herds led by an elderly female called the matriarch, as I just mentioned. Bull elephants, on the other hand, usually live alone, or they'll stick together in small bachelor herds. These elephants, they form very close bonds with one another, and herein lies my third argument for why elephants should be your favorite animal. They've shown a capacity, an ability to show empathy, compassion, and altruism. Elephants have been seen many times helping, aiding, supporting other elephants. For example, they'll protect young or helpless elephants from potential threats. They'll also comfort other elephants in distressing situations. There were scientists studying Asian elephants in a park in Thailand, and they noticed that whenever one of the elephants would get upset about something, like maybe a snake, nothing too huge, nothing major, but whenever these elephants would get upset, the other ones would rush over, they'd stand next to their friend, and they would apparently try to console her. They would touch her with their trunks, they would make these soft chirping noises as if they were trying to calm her down. Sometimes they would even put one of their trunks in her mouth, which apparently is something elephants find particularly soothing, kind of like sucking one's thumb. Elephants will also help calves that get stuck. They might get stuck in like a riverbed or a mud hole. It'll help them get out of whatever predicament they find themselves in. And then they'll also pull out tranquilizer darts from other elephants and things like sticks or thorns that might be stuck in them. They'll also rub dust on the wounds of other elephants, and they've even been seen desperately trying to help elephants who are dying. There's one elephant that was seen trying to lift up her friend with her tusks and calling out for help, I guess. There's also a story about a researcher who saw a herd gathered around a dying matriarch, and they're trying to put food in her mouth, they're trying to help her to her feet. Another thing that they'll do is they'll watch over and take care of calves that are not their own if the mother isn't present or unavailable. This usually happens when the calf is orphaned or has wandered away from its herd. This kind of behavior has been given the name of babysitting, which is one of the more obvious names they could have given it, I guess. Overall, when you look at the evidence, when you look at the behavior that's been recorded and documented from decades of watching elephants, it's pretty clear that when it comes to other elephants, and especially other herd members, they have each other's backs. And it's not just other elephants either. They've also been seen helping other species as well. There's a story of an elephant in a zoo in Guatemala that noticed an antelope drowning in a pool. And apparently it started trying to get the attention of zoo staff. It was trumpeting, it was gesturing towards the antelope. There's even a video of it. Someone managed to catch it on video. It's pretty cool. You can check that out using one of the links in the show notes. I recommend seeing it for yourself. It's an amazing example of an elephant potentially showing empathy and compassion towards another creature, not even one of its own species. This all kind of leads into my last argument for why elephants should be your favorite animal, which is that elephants have shown to be capable of feeling strong emotions and appear to be very sensitive animals. Elephants have been recorded expressing a wide spectrum of emotions, including joy, excitement, as well as grief, stress, anger. When an elephant in a herd gives birth to a new baby, for example, apparently it's something of a spectacle. The other elephants in the herd, they all get really excited. They'll start trumpeting, making a ton of noise, and then everyone wants to help with the newborn baby. They'll try to help it to its feet, and they'll try to lead it over to its mother so it can nurse for the first time. Elephants also get really excited when they reunite with another elephant that they haven't seen in a while. They'll touch each other with their trunks, they'll flap their ears, they'll click tusks, they'll make all sorts of noise. It's quite the happy reunion. They're clearly elated to be seeing a long-lost friend or a relative that they haven't seen in years, sometimes even decades. Along with joy, though, elephants also seem to be capable of feeling grief. They've been known to mourn their dead. For example, when elephants come across the remains of another elephant that has passed away, they'll stop and they'll kind of pay their respects, I guess, for lack of a better term. They'll touch the bones, they'll smell them, they'll turn them over. They just kind of stay pretty quiet and stay there for a little while. They don't do this with the remains of any other animal, and researchers don't quite understand the behavior, but it does seem to be a form of mourning, and at the very least, it's evidence that elephants have some concept, some level of understanding of death. Another example is when elephants walk by a place where another elephant has passed, an elephant that they knew. They've been seen stopping and pausing for a while, almost as if they're having a moment of silence for their fallen friend. The death of another elephant even seems to have psychological effects on them sometimes. Like when a mother elephant loses its baby, they seem to go through something similar to a grieving process. They might lag behind the rest of the herd, act pretty despondent for a while. They've also been seen circling a dead loved one and dropping branches and grass on the body. In addition to grief and joy, elephants can also definitely feel anger and stress. It seems like elephants suffer from a form of PTSD when they have traumatic experiences. They're definitely affected by them, and there's evidence for this. For example, starting in the 1960s and then continuing into the 90s, there were a lot of national parks in Africa that would perform mass cullings of their elephants. If you don't know what culling is, basically it's just population control. They just gun down herds of elephants in an attempt to control the population. And they did this because they were worried that the elephants would overrun the ecosystems of their parks. Over 14,000 elephants were killed during this time period, and it's been shown that the elephants that survived, who were usually calves at the time, to this day suffer from PTSD-like symptoms such as depression, hyperaggression. In fact, in a study of these elephants, researchers played the call of an unfamiliar elephant over a loudspeaker to them. They also played the same recording to a separate herd that had not experienced the cullings. The separate herd, the one that hadn't experienced that trauma, reacted normally. They circled around the young, they acted defensively. The affected elephants, on the other hand, didn't react in the same way. In fact, they seemed confused, as if they weren't quite sure what to do. When they played the call of a familiar elephant, they just ran away. The theory goes that these elephants weren't able to learn proper social skills due to being orphans. They didn't have older elephants to teach them how to be an elephant. In fact, these same elephants, they had a problem for a while in one of these parks where they would go around brutally killing rhinos. These are animals that aren't even natural enemies with elephants. And this problem wasn't solved until they introduced older bull elephants from a different park into the area. Now, I'll add one last fact, just because I don't want to end on such a depressing note. Just as the cherry on top, elephants actually might hold the key to curing cancer. This sounds ridiculous, but I promise you it's legit. Teams of researchers at the University of Utah and the University of Chicago, acting independently, what they found was that elephants have a superior DNA repair system in their cells, and it gets rid of potentially cancerous cells in their body. So elephants almost never die of cancer. And what scientists are doing is they're trying to take this system, this DNA repair system, and they're trying to harness it in a drug to create a medication that prevents cancer in human beings. So, yeah, there you go. One more big reason why you should absolutely adore elephants. Well, I officially rest my case, at least for now. Those are my arguments for why elephants should be your favorite animal. I hope, for my sake and for the elephants, that I've been able to convince you, but if I haven't, I think we all agree that elephants are amazing animals, capable of so much. And at the very least, I hope today's episode has increased your appreciation for these gentle giants. So next time you see an elephant, give it a little salute or something, now that you know a little bit more about it. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of The Zoologist and listening to me make my arguments for why elephants should be your favorite animal. I had a ton of fun putting together today's episode. I learned a lot of things I didn't know. I even had to leave a lot of stuff out, so I might even be making a part 2. I definitely will be making a part 2 to this episode sometime in the future. In the meantime, you can go ahead and look through the show notes at the research links, which you can find in the description, or on my website at www.thezoologist.net. If you'd like to get in touch, email me at the.zoologist.podcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions, comments, constructive criticisms, if there's an animal that you'd like to learn about, go ahead and let me know, and I might even give you a shout out in one of my episodes. Hope you all have a great rest of your week, and as always, have a wild day.